Well, hello there. This is the next edition of the Hall Pass. Got had an idea earlier today. Was watching some videos and thought, I think we could have some fun with this one. So I've seen this one before in the past, but there's some new information coming out, some new stuff going on that I thought would bring this to the current events level. So I thought, well, why not do this? Need to get another stream going, right? So I have Kyle. I'm gonna go ahead and bring Kyle in before I do much of the intro here. How you doing, Kyle?
Hey, Tommy, how are you?
Good, good. You can hear me okay? Everything's good?
I hear you good, bub. Yep.
Okay, great. So we have nobody live streaming with us tonight. That's no big deal.
That's all right.
Chad, Legicator's currently working out there protecting and serving as he should be. And we've got Ironton Auditor. We got Terry out there doing his thing tonight. He said he's doing a marathon live stream, 5-6 hours long. So, yeah, he's out there doing whatever it is he does. I still got to get involved in that a little bit one of these days.
He's a go-getter, man, from everything I understand.
I know, it's kind of crazy. But so anyways, anybody that watches this in the future, if you could do me a favor at this point, take a moment, make sure you like, hit subscribe. And if you may want to find out when we do other streams, make sure you hit the notification bell and you can find out whenever we are going to do something new. So, Kyle, I thought, some of the stuff I've had you on for is not exactly in your wheelhouse, but you've been a good panelist, a good guest anyways, even though, not exactly maybe up your alley, but this one is. And tonight, as you saw on the thumbnail we posted up, or I posted up, was ATF Says Whaaaat. Now, when I say it that way, does that remind you of something?
Yeah. There's of course, memes and different stuff, but the ATF is always a fun topic, whether it be actual events that take place and you hear about social media news, whatever it may be, or just the meme world or videos where people have a good laugh at the ATF's expense and some of the.
Oh yeah. Did you happen to see my description? Did you see my description of the show tonight?
No, I did not, man. When you and I talked about me coming on for you, I
don't remember if I put it on the YouTube description or if I put it in the Facebook announcement that I shared. I don't remember which one it was, but at one point I said, disclaimer, this show is not safe for your dogs. It may be triggering. Don't let your dogs watch.
Save a puppy. Abolish.
Yeah, there's a couple jokes within that if they know the ATF, they have a reputation for whenever they do raids, they kill dogs. So, which made its way into Yellowstone. Did you watch Yellowstone?
I've seen a couple of episodes. I have not.
Oh my God, dude. Okay, so this current season, without giving away any story, this current season, there is a point at which a very highly influential politician decides to visit the local Indian reservation. So when they show up, Secret Service shows up first, the tactical variety, and they kill all the damn dogs.
Oh, why wouldn't they, right?
So,
I mean, isn't that what you're supposed to do when you show up?
So, but ATF's the one that has the reputation mostly for killing everybody's pets. So that's why that was in a disclaimer. And then I put that it may be triggering. There you go. Okay. I know I expected at least a chuckle.
Allie did just tell me, which the viewers probably don't know who Allie is when I say Allie, but Tommy, you do. But it's what she heard that and she said, I want to watch it. So apparently we're going to watch Yellowstone soon. So
you guys haven't watched from the beginning or anything then?
No, I've caught a couple of random, episodes here and there or parts of an episode. We work a lot, man.
Well, I think the first season is only 7 episodes. All the seasons after that, 2, 3, and 4 are 10 episodes. This season, they're doing that classic irritating thing where they do 8 episodes, then they say it's a mid-season break, and you got to wait several months to get the rest of the season.
Yeah, of course. Well, why wouldn't you?
I don't know what that accomplishes. What's that?
No one knows what that accomplishes.
I don't know. It's the most difficult show to watch I've ever had without going into details. You got to look up what channel you can find it on when it comes into a new season. And it's a hassle. I don't know why they make it so difficult. But anyways, it's a great show. And it has a little bit of that government comes in and kills all the dogs part. This is season 5, so you'll have to watch a lot before you.
So
get
it's accurate.
As far as I can tell, yeah, it's accurate. At least in those accounts. So let me get to what we wanted to talk about here. You drinking anything?
Oh yeah.
What you got?
This
is a show about the ATF, dude.
Was that a rhetorical question, or?
Well, this is an ATF show.
Am I drinking anything? Just some Buffalo Trace here. Which way's the camera?
Okay. Just drinking neat.
Yep, just neat, man. That's
okay.
You know me. It's typically every now and again.
For the uninitiated, neat means no ice, no water, no mix, no nothing, just whiskey in a glass. That's neat. I decided tonight I've got a whiskey sour, homemade, no sour mix. This is pure lemon juice, straight out of the lemon. Simple syrup, which is water and sugar, and bourbon, and an egg white. So I've got the old school. This is the old school recipe made from scratch. It's pretty good.
Yes, it is.
Pretty good.
Yes, it is. I'm kind of jealous. I mean, I'm enjoying the Buffalo Trace, but your bartending skills are far better than mine. That's why I drink things neat, because I like whiskey, and
you're like, no, as little work as possible.
I just pour it in the glass, man.
I get it. Well, because I'm doing the show, that's probably what's going to come next is neat.
So, maybe I'll visit you at home for that one.
Well, as a matter of fact, I contacted Joe today to see if he's available, and he's working. So me and you and Joe, at a minimum, need to get together.
Yes,
and have a little Christmas or something or other. I don't know. Yes. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely, great.
But anyways, you're not smoking anything. You don't smoke cigars in the house, right?
Not in the house. Nope. Don't smoke cigars in the house. I would, but I don't.
Is Allie about to chime in on that one?
I got the O face. Yeah, well, not directed at her. For other reasons. But no, I do vape still sometimes, man. Sometimes chew, whatever. But
I don't think vape falls underneath ATF. There's no T there.
I guess you better ask the ATF about that.
I better not, because then they might say, yeah, that's us. Yeah, we get regulated.
It's a nicotine product, of course. Of course we get it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just thought we would talk about, whatever A and T anyone's having before we get into the Fs. For those that don't know, because there may be somebody one day in the future that watches this, I don't know. ATF stands for Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which is short for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Technically, they are the BATFE. But everybody in the firearms world, everybody in the anti-government world, everybody in the Second Amendment world calls them ATF. So they are the regulatory body at the federal level that takes legislation regarding alcohol, tobacco, firearms, or explosives and put that legislation into regulatory action within the executive branch. So they're the ones given the key to the hassle castle to drive us all crazy. And they do some really weird stuff, which is why we're here to make fun of them tonight. So
yes, it is.
So I don't know if you've kept up with any news, Kyle. I don't know if you get any newsletters from the ATF, or I do through email because the FFL. I didn't know if you still did.
I do some random stuff here and there, man. Since I let my FFL go, and I haven't got a new one, I get much less of it. And I catch random things, obviously, just in the world we live in.
Yes.
And by that I mean the world that you and I and others that we know. Right. I catch certain things here and there, but I don't offhand. I don't know specifically what maybe you're talking about right off, but
okay, fair enough. Because like I said, there's a couple things that I keep track of. I'm going to give it a little plug here. There is a YouTube channel called 4 Boxes Diner, and it's the number 4 Boxes Diner, and it's a guy named Mark Smith. I met him at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Dallas this year. And I, due to the graciousness of Buckeye Firearms Foundation and Jim Irvine and the Faster Saves Lives program, they had me and Jim go to the Legal Scholars Conference. and it was a one-day conference before the gun rights policy conference began. And I met Mark Smith there, and he gave a couple lectures during the conference, some small ones, and then he had an official time frame there. And he does amazing work in the legal world of Second Amendment. And Four Boxes Diner is dedicated specifically to the Second Amendment, and he gives sometimes within an hour or two of a court decision, and we're talking lower courts. We're not talking major Supreme Court decisions. We're talking he will keep track of everything going on, even at state levels, low levels, and whenever there's a decision significant enough for him to talk about, he will be on there sometimes within an hour or two of it actually being handed down by a judge to explain it. And that's how I've been keeping up more than I've ever been able to, simply because the information, he does all the legwork. I just got to tune into his channel and listen. And he'll do videos as short as 3 to 6 minutes to explain this case just got handed down in the appellate level of New York or the Second Circuit federal jurisdiction. Most everything going on right now is in New York because so let me back up here a little bit. There was a case came out in June, NYSERPA v. Bruin. NYSERPA is an acronym standing for New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. That's who sued the Attorney General of the state of New York, which was someone named Bruin. I don't even know if they're still there. But they sued because of some New York state laws. Short version, the Supreme Court sided on what you and I would consider the side of the Second Amendment, saying, for one, the levels of scrutiny that we've used for 60 years in America, that in my opinion, leftist judges created this test. That decision got rid of us using the levels of scrutiny in the future, which is an amazing thing for people, nerds like me that pay attention to constitutional history, constitutional law. But it also, one of the great things that Justice Thomas did in his opinion is he specifically said that all these balancing tests that the courts wanted to do currently, that's what these tests of levels of scrutiny are all about, that we don't need to use them. Why? Because when the founders wrote the amendments and then they were ratified by the states, they already did those balancing tests. Balancing tests in legal constitutional law terms means whenever the government wants to step on your rights, judges were trying to balance the interests of the state versus you're trying to say how much infringement on your freedom of speech, your freedom of assembly, blah, 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 all the civil rights, how much of those could be infringed on or stomped on based on a balancing of how much interest did the state have. And Clarence Thomas said, no more. We need to get rid of these when it comes to civil rights, because when the founders created these civil rights, they'd already done the balancing test. So basically, it's been applied to that logic has been applied to the Second Amendment as of June 2022 to say, in order to infringe on the Second Amendment, it's not a balancing test in 2022. It was a balancing test in 1791. So unless you can show me something that's analogous or something similar to the restrictions government want to do in 2022, unless you can find something similar that they were doing at the same time in 1791, it's not going to fly anymore. So that takes me back to New York. New York, after Bruin, passed a brand new law under Governor Hochul, basically saying to the Supreme Court, we can pass laws anyways. We don't care what you say. And they passed some seriously restrictive laws. Well, that has been nothing but a bonus to our side, because that creates all the cases we need to test what the Supreme Court did. So now it's going up to all these different levels in the state of New York, at their state levels as well as the federal levels, and all kinds of different judges are like shutting them down, man. It's great. It's been victory after victory after victory, and it's still bubbling up through the system, but we're getting victories at almost every level on almost every question. Today alone, the state of New York said the state of New York Supreme Court, which their Supreme Court is not the top in New York. Their appellate court is the equivalent of the Supreme Court in every other state, but they call them by different names. So the lower level court already said today that New York's red flag law system is unconstitutional. That happened today. And within a couple hours of that decision, Mark Smith had a video up explaining it. So I'm really promoting his channel. If you want to keep up with Second Amendment law, it is amazing how up to date and how he'll boil it down, at least to my level. And then one of the things I hope to do with this channel is take it from the constitutional scholar, semi-legally educated level into the average. I work in I do auto mechanics for work level. I want to help those people get it all the way down to the most basic. So that's one of my goals to channel. But the point is, that whole side note there was watching Four Boxes Diner today is what gave me the idea for this. And then I decided to look up the video that I already told you about. And I found out, though, that since that one that me and you saw a couple years ago, and we're gonna react to tonight, I found out that they now have a whole series. He's turned that into a whole channel. Yeah, there's a bunch of those now. He's added more characters. They actually did a interview with Joe Rogan, which he animated. It's not a video with Joe Rogan. He animated the ATF agent doing a. He animated that interview with Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan is even an animated guy in one of his videos. So I watched.
That's got to be good.
What's that?
That has to be good.
Oh, it is. It was definitely a good one. And but yeah, at first when I saw it, I'm like, okay, they just faked the Joe Rogan interview. But then when I watched it, no, I mean, it's his voice or somebody imitating him very well. So I'm guessing it's him. Hey, Fubar, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. We've basically just been doing an intro to the show, chatting between me and Kyle, talking about the ATF and making fun of them a little bit. And we're going to do a little review of a video here in a minute. How you doing? We talked about what drinks we're having. What drink are you having, Fubar?
I will say I like this better. I'm on my computer tonight, Tommy, and it is back. I can see everything a little better. I can actually see the comments a little better, and so that's neat.
Yeah, you can. All fucktards, he said.
Fubar, fucktards. Right on, man. Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I knew you didn't mean us. I knew you meant the ATF. It's cool. That's cool.
It's okay.
But no,
we'll let that one slide. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, Fubar has showed up. Oh, he's not drinking until tomorrow. You know, I kind of considered that, but I just thought, I cannot have a show about the ATF without drinking. What's that? You didn't consider?
I didn't consider that, man.
You didn't consider it? So I was going to save this till the end of the show, but I'll say it now. Go Bucks! Tomorrow's the game.
OH.
IO and Fubar. I know you're not from here. You're from up from the northwest, right? I'm pretty sure. So I don't know what he's saving his drinking for tomorrow. But
great to have you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's here. He's here all the time, but I have such a horrible memory. Sometimes all I can remember is the generalities, as you know, Kyle. So
I do.
Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
So anyway, he's talking. Wait a minute, Broncos. Boise State. Are we talking Boise? I think he's talking Boise.
He's going to tell us.
Wyoming Broncos. Okay. That's right. But I think Boise's Broncos too, aren't they? I don't remember. Anyways,
college. There's so many colleges, man.
There are. There's a few Broncos out there too.
I'm going to. He said, "Yeah,
yeah."
I don't know if he meant the Denver Broncos or
I know where I got sidetracked. So the ATF came out with an open to FFLs December 27th. What was that? 3 days ago. An open letter to FFLs, and that's what spurred the recent ATF buzz within the Second Amendment / Second Amendment legal community. So basically, they come out with a letter to the FFLs with illustrations and everything, Kyle. So once again, for those of everyone that don't know, an FFL is a federal firearms license. In order to get one, you fill out almost as much paperwork as you do to buy a car or join the Army, but not quite, maybe close. You fill out a bunch of paperwork, get some, I think, fingerprints, Yeah, you do fingerprint card, don't you? Yeah, you do fingerprint.
Fingerprints. You get a visit at the end of it and all that jazz.
Oh, that's right. You get your very own visit from your very own ATF agent to let you know that you're, being monitored. Actually, mine was very cool. He was a good guy, cool guy, just
Mine
doing his
was
job.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't disclose names, obviously, but that really was probably the the most fun of it all. Actually, we had a good time talking to him and stuff. So he was pretty cool.
Hey, educators here. Educators here. So
Hey,
when you get your FFL, you're now licensed to sell firearms. So you're a legal arms dealer, kind of like a pharmacist is to drugs, right? You're a legal arms dealer, and so I had my own. I had my own gun shop for a little while, and then after the gun shop, I transferred the FFL here to my home, and then Kyle had one as part of the gun shop he was in business with, and that's how we kind of got reacquainted. He'd been a student of mine in a previous class, and years later, like 3 years later, him and a friend at the time decided to open a gun shop. They got an FFL, and they wanted me to be their trainer. I was working somewhere else at the time that I was just about to leave, so I ended up working for Kyle. So Kyle was my boss for a little while, and so that's how we got kind of reacquainted and seriously acquainted. And you got him an auto sear on his AR, so he got some sort of class 3, or what would it take to get an auto sear on your AR, Fubar? How'd that work?
an auto sear on an AR. It'd be a form. He applies Form 1.
Form 1. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this doesn't make sense to hardly anybody watching it now or in the future is the point. So it's crazy paperwork, crazy regulations that are hard to understand even for people that are inside the industry. So the ATF came out with this open letter to federal firearms licensees on the 27th, clarifying their new position that is now Class 3 Form 1. Yep. So their position now on 80% polymer lowers, Kyle. But this is what they said was they're talking about. They even say it in the letter. Basically, it comes down to things that can be turned into a Glock. Is sort of, in legal words, that's the way they put it.
It always comes
so
back
it's
to
8%. They said that they're called Lone Wolf 80s. I'd never heard that phrase.
Lone Wolf is the manufacturer. 80 is the 80%. So it's a basically a frame of a firearm that's 80% completed. It must be completed by the purchaser.
I tell you what, Kyle, do me a favor as the technical guy here tonight. Do me a favor and just talk about 80% lowers. Just 80% in general. Just talk about that stuff.
Yeah, so
I'm going to go refill while you do that, but that's your wheelhouse, not mine.
I've got my refill, my canter here next to me, but so 80% lower, whether it be pistol or a receiver for a fire control group for rifle or anything else, an 80% lower or an 80% frame is a unit, I guess we'll call it, for lack of a better term. I don't follow the ATF that closely, but it's a piece of manufacturing that is 80% completed. It is sold legally from manufacturers without a serial number. You can get them serialized, but the whole idea behind that is they're not serialized because it's not classified as a firearm. So then the purchaser then has the legal right to finish the milling process to make it into a receiver or a frame that can then accept the fire control group or the trigger mechanism, whatever you choose to call it, turning it into a functioning firearm. However, they're not serialized. So as long as you do not do that with the intent to resell, or you don't do that for someone else who has purchased that 80% unit, it's perfectly legal because it's not a firearm. However, where it gets fuzzy is people do that and sell them, and so there are some legalities, and it's without going into that whole rabbit box. I guess I want to say rabbit hole, but that whole rabbit box, it's kind of an inside joke. But without going down that trail, this to an 80% frame or lower is a manufactured piece of either polymer or some other material, aluminum, whatever it may be, that is 80% completed, sold by a manufacturer to an individual that does not require a background check, a 4473B form, any of the ATF stuff, that can then be finished by the individual to make a firearm.
So Kyle, when you buy one, aren't they normally in a jig?
Some come with a jig, some come without. The jig can be bought separately. So let's say you can buy. Let's say you want to buy an AR-15, milling jig. You can do this with a hand drill, battery powered hand drill. You can do it with a drill press, maybe other stuff now.
Now you're talking AR specifically at this point. You're talking AR-80s.
No, I mean even Glock. Glock polymer 80s, or any of the Glock. What do you call it? Lookalikes or copies. You can buy a jig. Yeah, knockoffs. You can buy a jig specific to that style or that type of firearm, and you can just keep buying the polymer 80s or the aluminum 80s and use whatever method to finish milling those devices out. But sometimes you can find kits. A lot of times you'll find kits even that have a fire control group, your springs and trigger bar and whatever else, depending on the type of firearm, and the jig, which is basically a stencil. And
there you go. That's a good way to put it for someone that doesn't understand.
Yeah,
is the jig so the 80%er is the beginning. So if a manufacturer was going to create a firearm in their factory, they would start with what we get 80% completed. That would be the beginning process. So before they finish the process, they sell it not quite done yet. And so what made it legal was that it isn't a firearm, and it's only 80% to the level at which the federal government would consider it a piece of a firearm that had to have a serial number. So correct. The idea is you could buy it, and if you got a little bit of technical knowledge, which you do and I don't, you could then drill out the holes with the jig, because you then put the 80% piece inside the jig. The jig then has, like you said, like a stencil. That is I'm glad you come up with that, because it tells you where to put the drill and where to drill the holes. And then you make it into 100% receiver. But correct. Until you give it someone else or you sell it, you as an individual do not have to have a serial number.
Correct.
I explained this to people in the past by saying you can go to the car dealership and you can pay cash for a vehicle, and you can say, please have it delivered to this address. Let's assume, for sake of illustration, you live on a farm of 100 acres and you got land. Deliver it to this address. If you never plan on taking it onto a public road and you never sell it to somebody, well, in this case, you sales wouldn't even matter. You don't have to have insurance. You don't have to have a driver's license, and you don't have to have a tag on it.
Registration.
If it stays on private.
Let's use that word for sake of people always think registering firearms, but let's use registration.
Right. If you bought a vehicle for cash, had it delivered to your house, so it was never driven on a public road from the time you paid for it, and they dropped it off on your property and you kept it on your property, you wouldn't have to have a driver's license, a registration, or any insurance on it, because it's on your private property. So that sort of works the way we're talking about 80%ers here. Is it came out of the factory, not an actual firearm by the definitions of the federal government, and you are going to finish it privately for your use only. And so therefore it doesn't need registered or serialized by the federal government. That roughly right?
Yes. And one thing I'm actually really intrigued by, I kind of want to answer Fubar's question there.
Yeah, feel free to answer it, please.
But before that, I do want to say the crazy thing is for people watching or who may be watching in the future, this only applies to smokeless powder firearms. Black powder firearms are not considered
Well, true.
Regulated. They're not regulated by the ATF. So
let me clarify. Black powder is not regulated at all.
No.
So none of what we're talking about applies to black powder. So the 80%ers are for modern firearms.
Yeah, smokeless powder firearms that shoot smokeless powder cartridges. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So Fubar's question. So could I mill my own on a 3D cutter and not need a license or number if it for personal? Yeah, and that's where a lot of the stuff. And Tommy follows a lot more of this than I do. Not out of lack of I'm not interested. However, he just that's his wheelhouse is more politics and following the stuff. But yes, the way the laws are right now, and I want to stress right now because there's a lot that goes on and a lot of stuff that's always talked about.
Well, that's exactly what this open letter is about. Is as far as what I understand, it changed the status of 80%ers for handguns. I didn't see when I read the open letter, and it's 10 pages with a lot of technicalities in it. So today I didn't have time to go into it in great detail. But from what I understand, they've changed this as it pertains to handguns. The open letter was to FFLs, right? So it's telling the federal firearms license you can't sell 80% lowers anymore. And it specifically talked about the lone wolf, Glock knockoff type stuff. It didn't mention that I read, and even the illustrations were all Glock knockoff stuff.
Wow.
So it's saying those aren't legal without background checks now.
Without trailing off too far onto one theme, keeping it kind of generalized, Lone Wolf is a manufacturing brand. So unless they've done something that I'm unaware of, I don't know how they could specifically even name them and not others because they're a manufacturer.
They named them along with a list of other things that the 80s are called. So they were trying to be general. I'm not going to pick. Yeah, I'm not picking on them for that point. Although
it's an infringement regardless.
Well. Yeah, but no, that would not apply to auto sears. Auto sears, as well as any parts that could be used to turn a gun into full auto, or parts laying on a workbench to make a suppressor, would put you in jail for just having the parts. So no, that would not apply to that.
A minimum of 10 years.
Yeah. So what we've been talking about is, quote, sort of the way it was. So as of December 27th, 2022, the ATF came out with an open letter to federal firearms licensees. In other words, the sellers, that you can't sell these 80% handguns anymore. Like I said, I didn't see it mention the AR lowers, though. However, Mark Smith, the guy I was talking about, Four Boxes Diner, already has a video explaining all the intricate details of the law and why they're going to fail legally. But my point is, all of this stuff we're talking about is up in the air at the moment, and that's what made me think of this video that we want to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. Let's see. And it is, I believe, 6 minutes long. So I'll just intro it here just a little bit, Fubar. Yep, I'll just intro a little bit. As far as I know, this is this guy's YouTube channel. This is his first version of a parody on the ATF. I did notice that he had some older videos, but as far as I know, this was his first one regarding the ATF, and it's a classic. It's really awesome. So let me see here.
As you're getting it ready, Tommy, I do just want to point out, and I want to say before I say anything else, I know that Tommy also is not anti-NRA. However, I do find it amusing that also there at the podium.
Well, he talks about the NRA in the beginning, and I don't notice. I don't know if I ever noticed it before, but he poked some fun at him early. And I mean, we could poke fun. I could have a whole show or series of shows making fun of the NRA. I appreciate what they do, but man, could they be so much better at it? That's sort of the point. But anyways, let me get this going here, and I may pause a few times, but it's only 4.5 minutes, so it's not very long. Also, this is another attempt of me trying to figure out my technical limitations here. So this one I downloaded instead of streaming straight from YouTube. So it may completely fail or it may work better. We shall see.
Turn it up, Tommy.
What's that?
Turn it up.
What'd you say, Kyle?
Turn it up.
Turn it up. Let me see if there's a volume on this thing. There is. And it's up at 100%. That's all it is.
Supporting us, and they always have. So we really like them, and we appreciate them bringing you all here to listen to our speech. All right. So first off, we're the ATF, and we're going to be explaining how simple gun laws are. What you are going to be learning in this presentation is one, why are gun owners such crybabies? The law isn't hard, you're just not believing hard enough. Get harder with me, Richard Zay. All right, first slide here. Click. We're going to talk about pistols. Look at that. It's very simple. It's a pistol. Everybody knows what a pistol is, and that's a pistol. Click. Look at this. This isn't a pistol. This is an AOW. I see that it kind of looks like a pistol, but it's clearly not a pistol.
So AOW means any other weapon. So basically they made a category for everything that they couldn't categorize. And it's called an AOW. So AOW is any other weapon. So that's what this one, by adding the I love the grip zone part there and the extra grippy thing. But
when we want to govern it, but we don't know how, we call it an AOW.
Exactly. It's called an any other weapon. Right. There you go.
Yeah.
Who made this PowerPoint? That's a pistol. Also a pistol. Apparently. Don't need a tax stamp for that one. Like, all right.
I want to interrupt, Tommy, but did you see the comments here? Fubar said, real hard to hear. Leducator said, you have to share the screen and you will have to watch it directly. If not, we are only listening to your own speakers.
Oh.
That's why it's hard to hear.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, like I said, working through technical stuff. Let me see if I can fix it this way.
Next, click. This one's
better.
A rifle.
Much better.
Apparently, this is a rifle. Oh, because it has a stock. It's got a shoulder thing in the back there. So this one's a rifle. Let's just move on. Next. All right. So here we got a rifle. As you can see, everything's in there. It's a 14 and a half inch barrel that's been pinned to 16. Got a nice banana clip. Perfect rifle. Click. Yeah. Well, this looks like the same. What's different here? All right, this is an SBR. This is illegal. You'll go straight to jail for this one. Pay your $200 tax stamp or go straight to jail. Hold on. We're going to go back again and see the difference between this one and the previous one. Click. All right, so this one's a rifle. Click. This one's an SBR. All right, moving on. Next. This one's a pistol. All right, let's go back. Click. This one's a SBR. Click. This one's a pistol. This one's a pistol. Looks like it's fine. Everything's fine with it. You can have this. No tax stamp. All right, let's move on. Next. Click. This one is an AOW. Yep, this was an AOW. Straight to jail on this one. Click. Well, this looks this. All right, let's go back. Click. All right, this one's an AOW. It's in red. You go to jail for it. Next. This one is not an AOW. Oh, the grips are different. See, the grip's a little bit different. That makes a big difference, apparently. 10 years in prison for that little grip thing there. Next. All right, so here we got a rifle. Pretty much the same rifle we've been looking at this whole time. That's great. Everything's legal there. Next, click. And now it's a machine gun. All right, so let's go back. Click. Let's go forward. Click. Yeah, these are the same gun, but it used to be a rifle, but now it's a machine gun because we said it's a machine gun now. So, all right, moving on. Making this easy for you guys. Next. Oh, this isn't a rifle or a pistol. This is just a gun. These are.
So, Kyle, I noticed on this one, I watched it again today. This one he's showing is a smooth bore.
Mm.
I didn't even know they made such a thing like this with smooth bore.
Yeah. This was, I can't remember the manufacturer, man. I haven't, honestly, since the shop closed, I have not kept up on all this as much as I really probably should even.
Right.
But there were some manufacturers making smooth bore firearms purely because of the ATF rulings.
Sure.
So just like you have a smooth bore shotgun and they have, rifled projectiles. This was their way to basically, send out, again, I'm going to speak in terms of exactly. Yeah. I'm going to speak in terms of ATF rulings here, but
yeah.
They were producing firearms that would either otherwise be considered SBRs, but they had a smooth bore. So if it's not rifled, nothing applies. It doesn't apply.
Right.
If it's not a rifle, if there's no rifled barrel, and you can elaborate on that, or I can, if you choose to, or whatever. But if there's no lands and grooves, basically creating a spiral effect of the projectile, if there's no rifling.
That's why it says swirly grooves on the inside on the slide.
Correct.
There.
Yeah. Right. If it's smooth bore, yeah, none of this applies. It can be as short as you want. You can put whatever you want on it. None of it applies. Doesn't matter.
But wait. Let me hit play.
Called Title I firearms for those of you who aren't in the know. Pretty simple stuff here. Next. Okay, now it's a short-barreled shotgun. Yep, that's a short-barreled shot. All right, we're moving on. Shoelaces. Those are good. Next. And they're a machine gun. Yeah, I've been working for the ATF for a while, and that's a real thing. You can really have shoelaces be machine guns, and that's why we determined that shoelaces can, in fact, be machine guns. That's just something that we do down here. It's how we get things done.
It's how we get things done.
All
right, so if you got any questions, now would be the time to ask. If you do have any questions after that very informative demonstration and PowerPoint I just gave, you're probably just a criminal, and, well, you should probably just go to jail.
So, yeah, there at the end, if you don't understand all these laws, you're probably just a criminal. Go fuck yourself,
criminal.
Right.
Yeah, so there are some rulings too on shotgun. So for example, just does everyone remember, was it the Mossberg? Help me out here, Tommy. I can't remember the name of it now. Shockwave. The Shockwave.
Oh yeah.
And there were, even at the shop here in Ohio, there was a lot of stuff up in the air for a while. You and I talked to local law enforcement and stuff about the Shockwave and this and that.
Well, we had an Ohio law. We had an Ohio law that was in the way as well with the Shockwave. So there was a federal ruling we had to wait on. Then there was an Ohio problem even after the Fed said it was okay. So yeah, we had double duty on the Shockwave.
Manufacturers constantly, and rightfully so, try to get around these ATF laws because most of them are bogus. So what happened with the Shockwave? So you have a pistol grip, and then you have a butt stock, which is typically what you shoulder or put to the center of your chest, depending on your shooting style or training or whatever. But so the Shockwave had neither. This was a curved grip. It was neither meant to be shouldered. However, it was not a vertical pistol grip. So they didn't know how to classify it. So there was a lot of, tuss, I guess would be the best word, or just confusion. And so there were state laws, there were federal laws, there were, a lot of questions. But even with smoothbore firearms, based on that last little tidbit there we looked at. So if it was 18 inches for a shotgun barrel, I think 28 inches overall length. If it has to be 28 inches overall length or else it's a short-barreled shotgun if it has a shoulder stock.
Well, Kyle,
Yes.
there's some other stuff happened since you closed the gun shop, and I've been out of the firearms industry in terms of retail and the FFL world. I didn't get to dive into it deep today, but I did hear that now they have a point system. So a 1 point, yeah. When they look at a weapon to see if it's legal or illegal, you can go on the point system. If it's an attachment or a modification,
well, that sounds accurate.
What's that?
Well, that sounds accurate.
Oh, it's horrible. It's a lot of maybes and ifs and possiblies.
Of course it is.
So it's a sliding scale that they get to decide. So if you put on, say, the 45-degree forward grip angle, right? Is that likely? Is that designed specifically to make it illegal? No. So that's either 0 or 1 point. And then if you get up to, I think you got to have 14 points to go to jail, basically. But anyways, I only barely got a glance at that. So I got to dive into that more and find out more about this new point system on determining whether or not you're basically, the way I heard it talked about was in the SBR category. So for the uninitiated out there, if you've got an AR or a rifle of a certain length, it's legal, no problem. Well, then as you begin to add features to it, forward hand grips, forward hand grips, pinned versus unpinned, muzzle flash eliminators, or I'm lost to vocabulary without using it very often. But there's all kinds of accessories that you can add that make it, oh my God, suddenly illegal, as you saw in the little parody video there. So now they've got a point system you got to look at to find out if your rifle's illegal or not. And let's see, I'm going to go to this question. We'll go to something that Leducator mentioned. So how did the Calico 9mm with a 50 round and a 100 round clip legal to sell? Well, if they were magazines, there's been no federal, even though they've tried a ton, there's been no federal limitations on magazine size.
There are state regulations in certain states, but not.
Yeah, certain states have magazine restrictions, but no federal restrictions on that. So I'm not even sure what Calico is. However, I can answer it based on that. So now here's, to me, the root of the issue, the core, the seed, the problem. Leducator says, I find it amazing that the ATF somehow has the power to make rulings as a law enforcement agency. No court needed, no judge ruling. They just act on the road. Tell me, how is that legal? Well, constitutionally, I would say it isn't. However, especially since the FDR era, when we have the massive power grab of the federal government under FDR, we've been living increasingly every day more and more under the bureaucracy of the federal government, not under our constitutional structure of the feds. The constitutional structure of our federal government is pretty simple. We have, the legislature, Article 1 authority. We have the executive branch, the president, Article 2 authority, and the Supreme Court, which is the only court mentioned in the Constitution specifically, is the Article 3. And under that, Congress can make other courts as they see fit. So all the rest of the federal court system is a creation of Congress. The only Article 3 specific power is to the Supreme Court. So in that structure, you have the executive branch. Under the executive branch, the president, as the executive, was allowed to create agencies to help him enforce the laws, to execute the laws written by Congress. So in other words, if Congress says we need to make sure all rivers over 100 feet wide within 5 miles of a city of 10,000 or more has a bridge, right? Obviously making stuff up here. Then it would be the president's job to then say, okay, we've now got this new law. How can I make it real? How can I execute that law or enforce that law? So then there would be an agency created, the bridge making agency, and they would go out and they would look at all the different places where this was true and start building bridges. That's basically all the executive branch is meant to do, is to execute the laws that have been duly created by the Article 1 legislature of what we call Congress today. However, as time has passed, the executive branch has like Department of Education, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Department of Drug Enforcement, Drug Enforcement Agency. So the courts have, and I can't remember the court decision, not that it would matter right now, but there's a court decision where the Supreme Court set up the precedent that they would defer toward the other two branches while they try to get things done. In other words, if there was a challenge to whether or not the ATF could make its own regs, we're going to defer to Congress and the executive branch that this is what they call a political question. Supreme Court tries its best to stay out of political questions, only get involved in constitutional questions. So they have deferred over the past, saying, well, this is a fight between the people in the Congress and executive branch. When the Congress passed the law, that gave the authority to the executive branch to say, okay, create an agency or create a structure needed to make this law real, to execute it, to enforce it. So the Supreme Court says, we're just a bunch of judges. We're going to try to stay out of it when we can. So what's happened over the years is the bureaucracy, the unelected, which is what we currently call it, the fourth branch of government, those that actually have the power to, when you send in a piece of paper trying to get something approved or disapproved or whatever, the people with the power of the stamp to say, yes, you can or no, you can't, is all an unelected group of unionized, and I'm not anti-union, but they are a unionized group that you virtually cannot fire once they've got their jobs. And so we have very little power over them. They've become a monster of their own. And whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump or indifferent Trump, you saw the power of the executive bureaucracy and how it turned on the executive. And that's what was insane about some of the arguments against Trump, especially from the FBI. The FBI is owned by the executive. When Trump fired the director of the FBI and everyone wanted to say that was impeachable, that's silly. He's an employee of the president. It's part of the executive branch. So it was all such a silly argument by people that obviously, whenever you made that argument, you obviously had no clue how the government is supposed to work, at least. Maybe you knew how it's supposed to work and you just didn't want it to work that way anymore. But when you wanted to impeach a president for firing one of his employees, it was kind of silly in a constitutional sense. So back to Legicator's question here, or not really a question, but a comment about how it's sort of both. How is that legal? It's legal because Congress passed a law giving the executive the authority to enforce a law, and then the ATF was created. And in the ATF, there are people that say there are anti-gun people in the ATF, and they tend to, in my opinion, all the leftists in the executive branch reside at the top, the leadership levels of all these branches. Your nuts and bolts ATF agent is probably just as much, if not more, of a gun guy than I am. I'm not saying they all are. Some are, some aren't. Just like, as you know, Chad, in law enforcement, you'll get guys that are pro-Constitution, pro-rights, pro-gun. Then you'll get guys that are very much the opposite. So it's the same kind of thing. But yes, that's sort of the reason we're making fun of them is the leadership. It shouldn't be some random dude sitting in the ATF going, is this going to be a gun today or is this going to be an AOW today? Oh, that's another thing I found out today, Kyle. There is a classification by the ATF that is just gun. Did you know that? It's not AOW, it's not rifle, it's not pistol, it's just gun.
I had heard that. I haven't looked into it as to what falls into that category, but
I hadn't heard that at all. However, the tyranny of the unelected branch, the tyranny of the fourth branch, is a gigantic problem in America. And I listen to a historian regularly named Victor Davis Hanson, and everybody listening should check out his podcasts, his videos, his books. Victor Davis Hanson is one of America's treasures. And he was talking just the other day about how Napoleon struggled with the executive branch, the bureaucracy in the French government that survived the French Revolution. They survived the French Revolution and the government formed after it, all the way until he took over, and they survived all of that, and they were giving him trouble. The Soviet bureaucracy survived the Bolshevik Revolution, survived turning into communism, and Stalin and those guys complained about the bureaucracy and how it was out of control, and it was theirs. They technically owned it and had a hard time controlling it. The Byzantine Empire, we get the phrase Byzantine when we talk about something that's complicated and exceedingly difficult to deal with. It's too confusing. We call something Byzantine. That gets its name from the Byzantine bureaucracy, which was famous worldwide in history for being so complicated and insane. In the Army, we had ways we would joke about it. I had a sign up in my office said, "Your request has been disapproved. Please resubmit request in 30 days for final disapproval." So we joked about that shit all the time. It's kind of crazy. We talked about the tyranny of little old ladies in tennis shoes, and in the Army, at least in the Defense Department bureaucracy, little old ladies that get their jobs and just stay in there for 30, 40 years or whatever, and rise to the level of being the gatekeeper for the decision makers, the 3, 4, 5-star general, 3, 4-star generals, the heads of the secretary positions and so forth. They hold the power. The gatekeepers hold the power, and it's not the way it's supposed to be. So it's legal because the Supreme Court said that the bureaucracy is legal. Legislator is the end answer to that. Nor should it shouldn't be. However, we should not have a fourth branch that's unelected have so much power. And there's several different ways we think about solving that, but none of those are currently under the works of actually happening. Let's see here. Food Bar is saying top Fed clip. You're talking about the Calico, I assume. Top Fed clip, fun to shoot with 50 rounds, but the 100 you could not get a good shot. It was considered a pistol, but it started to overheat. It would go auto.
There's a lot of I don't want to say older, but different manufacturers over the years have had firearms that would have, I guess we'll call it issues like that. That being said, it's an issue because it's not meant to be full auto. However, it's not illegal. If it's a manufacturing flaw and you have done nothing to alter the firearm to make it an automatic firearm by definition, the fact that it overfeeds and fires multiple rounds, without an auto sear, it can be dangerous, I guess, honestly, because you don't know when to expect it and when not to. Outside of that, there's nothing illegal about it. But I actually had an old 22 that would do that. So
my dad had a shotgun. He gave it to my brother. He who shall not be mentioned. He gave it to my brother, but all you had to do to fire it was pump it. Mm-hmm. Trigger was irrelevant. Just pump it and it fired.
just cheap parts a lot of the times is really the answer to that. Cheap parts or poor quality assurance. So there's nothing about it that makes it illegal unless it's been altered, but it's just not. And I will honestly say that. I mean, most of the time, those things really are just unsafe because, if you have an automatic firearm, well, it's an automatic firearm. There's components in there that whether, so if it has a, selector or whatever, what the rate of fire is going to be, whether it be a 3-round burst or full auto or, single shot or semi-auto. But when you have something that's kind of just up in the air, it can be problematic and it can be dangerous, but it's not illegal.
So Fubar actually also says, I say arm every man, woman, and child. See how fast crime rate goes down. The Wild West wasn't so wild. Just a few bad eggs. I agree with you. I think it got the reputation of the Wild West because it was wilder than the rest of our civilization. But in terms of today, it wasn't so wild. And, Kyle's heard me say this probably 100 times at least, because when he helps me with classes or I've taught classes that he's been around, he's heard me explain this. But when I first got into being an instructor, a firearms instructor, my first motivation, my first mission statement, which is still true, is to create as many educated, armed, legal, or law-abiding citizens that I could. And I feel more educated, armed, law-abiding citizens that there are, the freer I am, because the less likely that a tyrannical government inside or outside the United States will be to try to take it all. And if they try to, the more likelihood there will be that we'll win and they won't. So, absolutely. I don't know about the child part, according to what your definition of child is. A child in 1970, that may not have gotten so much hell knows, but right now, I currently work in the school system, and I would say no. I deal with a lot of them now, and sometimes watching them with a pencil scares me. So I would say no on that. However, specific children, I ran a youth league at a place of employment I used to be at. I invented it and ran it. Very proud of it. One of my proudest achievements as a firearms instructor was creating that league and seeing that my ideas and the way I thought of doing it worked. So I've had a lot of experience with kids and guns, and they can be very good. Trust me, they can be better than your average adult easily. They don't have the shakes yet. They ain't got a lot of stuff on their brain. Their health is better. Their eyesight's better. Their ability to stay still is better. So they can be amazing shots. Put it this way. I had a 13-year-old that 2 seasons. A season was we had 8-week seasons. And we would do one per calendar season. So spring, summer, fall, winter. And so our seasons were 8 weeks, and we'd have a couple week break, and then we'd be back at it again. 2 seasons in a row. The 8th week, what we did was kind of a combination of all the skills we'd learned through the other weeks. And this kid with a 22 calibered AR at 75 feet would shoot the fire part of a matchstick off the match. Two seasons in a row he did it, 75 feet with an AR. Now, if you don't know a whole lot about guns and bore over height ratio issues, at 75 feet, you've got the bullet coming out of an AR down here, and the sights are like way the hell up here. I mean, there's a big difference. So his sights were like seriously at their limits to make it accurate, and he would shoot the top off a matchstick twice. So that was one of my kids. So very happy with that. But in general, no, keep guns away from kids. But every man and woman, absolutely. As long as they're legal, I would love to see every one of them armed and educated and trained at a minimum level on safety. The bar in, hold on here. In Wyoming, we open carry concealed with no permit. That's the same here in Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia, by the way. We've got an increasing level of states all across America that are what we call constitutional or permitless carry. I call it permitless carry. However, a lot of places and a lot of people call it constitutional carry. And open carry has been legal in all of our local states here, Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia, as far as I know, from the time of their founding. So it's like the Old West, amazingly enough, other than drugs through the roof, but no mass shooting or gun-related crimes.
Open carry is legal here because it's not illegal.
That's right. That's what I would teach in my classes, is that open carry is legal in the states that it's legal in. Like when I first got into the gun world and the gun legal world, I tried to look up the open carry laws. They don't exist. That's why it's legal, is because there's no law saying you can't, which is what we call liberty. So as long as it doesn't say you can't, you can. And so that's how we have open carry. Now, I know Texas had open carry. They've got a set of laws about it, because open carry, believe it or not, in Texas was not near as gun-friendly as everyone assumed for a while. You could open carry a AR or shotgun, but not a pistol, if my memory serves me right. But yeah, Kyle grew up with guns like I did. I grew up around guns as well. We also grew up, Fubar, at a different generation where concepts of respect and just basic decency were so different. Unfortunately for them, kids have so many influences today that are not as, I'm not saying everybody in my world when I was a kid were these virtuous, sainted angels or whatever. But in general, the way that we treated each other in, say, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and I would say even the early 90s was different than it is now. Just basic concepts of how to treat each other, respect, basic concepts of virtue, right and wrong are just so different at a society level that I worry about our youth and what they consider just simply right and wrong. I think that's been put into, it's a muddy waters now compared to when we were kids. I think concepts of right and wrong were just fairly cut and dry, whether you were from a Democrat or Republican household, leftist, right. Even if you were being raised by hippies, the ideas of right and wrong were fairly common amongst us all for a very long time. And now those things are starting to change in a significant way. So that's why I would say that things have changed quite a bit since then. So anyways, I'm sure we could beat up on the ATF a whole lot more, but
all night long.
Well, that's true. Back then, if you did not have manners, you may be missing teeth by the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone here on the panel was raised that way, and everyone watching, and hopefully quite a few that will. It's a different world, man, and we can go into that in future episodes and talk about it. I try to keep my pulse on stuff as much as I can, and I'm constantly shocked. At least once a week, I'll discover something going on around me that I wasn't aware of that just blows my mind. What seems to be the thing lately that seems to be just catching steam, as much as we oppose it, those of us that are what I would consider average, normal, virtuous, we're not standing out on the bell curve at all. People are these drag shows and this pushing of the drag shows to kids and pushing them to all corners of our society. They want to do them in the libraries. Why would, that's a whole different show. But anyways, the stuff going on that's changing the ways we live are coming at us like freight trains, 5 and 6 at a time, to the point where we can't, in a pre-internet world, we had one major issue at a time, and as a society, we dealt with it. They may have never ended, but they were kind of one at a time, or maybe two. But starting in about 2007, if my memory serves me right, 2007, 2008, it just started coming as a landslide. And there's just simply not enough people that oppose to stop all the assaults on who we are as a people, a civilization, a culture, a government, a nation. We don't have enough power, enough brain power, enough voices to stop it from those that have learned to use all the weapons against us. We're using one. I'm using this to hopefully, educate, talk, entertain about our side, our point of view. But there's 10,000 for every one of me, or for every hour of eyeballs and ears I get, there's 10,000 eyeballs and ears to the other. I don't know if we can win or not. I don't know if we can stop it or not, to get it back to the day where if you didn't have manners, you may be missing teeth. I don't know if those days will ever return. I'm sure they're still true in a lot of pockets, a lot of families, a lot of people in the country. It's just all of the opposite is what gets the eyeballs and the attention and the ears these days. So I don't know, man, but I just wanted to say, for one, we picked on the ATF, and I will continue to pick on the ATF as long as these rulings come out. But you got to remember, these rulings come down from ATF attorneys and executives at the very highest levels. These are not your ATF agents on the ground. In general, if you go to the ATF's website right now and you go to their press releases link, I did this earlier, you will see tons of criminals. I mean, real criminals, right? Not people like us that had a forward grip in the wrong place or something like that. I'm talking legit criminals, criminal enterprises, gangs, cartels that are running guns to people we don't want guns run to. You got tons of that those guys are out there doing the hard work. Now, my position is the ATF shouldn't even exist. I don't think they're a constitutional agency. So they shouldn't exist. However, I think it's one of those legitimate arguments we can have in America about should they exist or not. Now, once we get into what they do, but I'm talking about whether or not they should exist, there are justifications for their existence. For instance, the Commerce Clause. If one state has a crazy set of gun laws and another state has a different one, and this state's constantly just importing guns that this state says is illegal, which if there wasn't an ATF or their current systems, that's what would happen. You would have Wyoming, you would have Idaho, you would have Washington State, you would have Oregon back when they weren't crazy left. You would have states like that, Texas, you would have even Ohio and Midwest states just creating guns. All things fucked ATF. That's a good one. I haven't heard that one. You would have states like that importing or causing to be imported into states that said no, right? So the federal government stepped in to create a standardized system. So there is a justification under the Commerce Clause. I think that could be done. Also, the General Welfare Clause could possibly justify an existence of ATF. However, they have far exceeded anything that would be justified constitutionally. But I don't want to pick on your individual agent without me talking about what they do specifically. At the agency level and how they make determinations on what's legal and illegal, that's all lawyers and top-level executives. That is not agents. So make sure you keep that.
9 times out of 10, in my experience and others I've talked to, the field agents that the average, federally licensed firearm dealer is going to deal with, or even the general public, they're decent people. There's, it isn't these folks that are. They're just there doing a job to enforce, the laws that are in place. So
well, it's like currently me and a local FBI agent. Man, we just love to death. Great human, great person. Love hanging out with him. Sees life, sees government, sees liberty the way we see it, sees constitutional protections the way we see it, sees guns and gun laws the way we see it. But he's an FBI agent, and he's ready to retire. But we also know the insane corruption at the upper levels of the FBI. You got to divide those two. So even though I've picked on the ATF, I just want to throw out a hat tip to those guys, the guys out there doing the grunt work, the dangerous work, that are not out there trying to get your average citizen for having a pinned versus unpinned flash suppressor. Those aren't the guys we're talking about. So just want to make sure we give them a little nod and appreciate what they're doing, putting their lives on the line, doing the real deal. So just wanted to throw that out as a caveat there. And switch one more time to Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
And tomorrow, even though I would love to see it, I would love to see an Ohio State Michigan rematch.
I will settle for them beating Georgia.
I will say, yeah. I mean, no, I'm fine with them beating Georgia, and I'm fine with Michigan winning, and we get a crazy rematch, or I'm fine with TCU winning, and we get Ohio State TCU. FUBAR, by the way, I am a graduate of The Ohio State University, and I've been raised here and raised as an Ohio State fan by my mom long before I attended the college, because I attended the college in my late 30s and early 40s. So. All things Ohio State here are sacred, but I'll take a Michigan rematch or not. I kind of hate to break precedent. We've never played them more than once in one season. I do kind of hate to break that precedent, but I would also love to get the rematch. And he said he's sorry. Would love to get the rematch and the win. But also, hey, I'd be lying if I say I wasn't scared of the loss as well. I'd hate to lose to them 3 times and twice in one season. That would be absolutely
hard.
A Buckeye nightmare. So, and yes, I had to say the word Michigan because without this being filled with Ohio State fans, you may not have understood who I was talking about otherwise. We call them Teton, the team up north. So anyways, Kyle, I'm going to let you go, dude. You look sleepy.
I have been working 7 days a week, about 16 hours a day for going on about 3 months, man. So, yeah, I'm a little sleepy. But
well, God bless you, man.
But always time for this, man. It's been great. I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate your nudge. Okay, let's see. He's got his big 3 are Colorado. Is that Colorado Buffaloes? CSU. Who's CSU, man? You're going to have to educate me here a little bit. I'm glad you're a college football fan at least. Your big three are CU Buffs. Wait a minute. Hold on.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's up, brother?
Hey,
Oh, I just I was able to get out of there and wanted to hop up on for a bit.
You got out of work early?
Yeah, I had 1 hour of personal time left that I had to use. I didn't even realize it. So I had to actually it was kind of funny because I got there and I was like talking to the other guys about making sure that their time was all spent up, because obviously this is the last couple days they got.
Oh, that's right. The end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to check and I was like, oh my gosh, I somehow got an hour left. So I had to actually put in for that and use it tonight. So I got out of there an hour early.
now you're utilizing it for something worthwhile.
Absolutely.
So let's see. He's saying Colorado State is CSU. Okay, so who's CU then? So we got Colorado University and Colorado State. Is that right, Fubar? And Army, of course.
Is that Colorado State University and then Colorado University?
Well, that's what he said. Colorado
Yeah,
State.
Colorado University is the Buffaloes, and then you got the Rams at Colorado State.
Okay, so I was trying to figure out who he said he was fans of.
I had no idea.
Hold on.
There he is.
I got to figure out what all these buttons are, man. Sorry. Hey, so do you got any ATF stories for us?
Well, I can tell you this. My experience with the federal government from a law enforcement standpoint is the expression useless as tits on a boar hog. I can tell you this. When I was a detective, I actually had a bank robbery. And in this said bank robbery, we went and established a crime scene and we started investigating it and starting to gather facts. So I called.
Did you say in Texas?
No, a bank robbery. Started gathering facts.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought somewhere you said this was in Texas. I didn't know. Okay, go ahead. No.
I was in a detective's office. So we started gathering the facts and stuff. We started putting together a case. So I went ahead and called the FBI, as it's our typical protocol to do so, and let them know there was a bank robbery. Well, I get this lady on the phone when I called the FBI, and I introduced myself, and I said, this is what's going on. And she says, okay, what can I do for you, sir? I said, well, I would like to let you guys know that we've had a bank robbery, an armed robbery down here, and let you guys know, that's what we're working on, and so we can, get you involved. And she goes, I kid you not. She goes, okay. Okay. So what do you need us to do? And I said, it's a bank robbery. It's literally under your jurisdiction.
Isn't that part of the FBI's charter?
Yes, that's completely the reason they were supposedly developed. I mean, it was the whole idea, right? Yeah. So I said, it's a bank robbery. And she says, okay, but like, are you wanting like an agent? And I said, so I literally him-hauled around with this lady. And I'm not exaggerating this. This is a true story. At least 3 real minutes. Now that doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're literally trying to repeat how simple of a discussion this is, that I need the FBI to know that there is a bank robbery, I got so frustrated. I literally said, she goes, okay, what would you like for what would you like for our agent to do? And I said, don't worry about it. Tell him that. I said, here's what you do. I said, just tell him that by the time he gets this, that I'll have solved this case and we'll charge him with state code and he'll be in the local jail. And she says, kid you not, she says, oh, okay, I'll pass it on. Thanks. So you can't make this up, right? So I get a call 2 days later, and I'm proud to say, and it was so funny because that's exactly what I told him when he called me. He says, hey, this is Agent blah, 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 blah with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I had a message to call you. And I said, okay. And my message to you is I've already solved your bank robbery case. We've arrested the guy. He's on state charges in the Lawrence County Jail. And he says, oh, okay, great. So you don't need us? And I said, good thing I didn't.
I thought bank robberies were automatically federal.
It is.
Yeah.
It 100%. But 100% they have primary jurisdiction. 100%. But they wouldn't know what to do. Well, let me just say this. in my experience, I've never been impressed with any federal agency when it comes to law enforcement. And to put things in perspective for you, in the ATF and the way they overstep their bounds for those in the chat, in my opinion, they need to be abolished. And I'm a captain of a police department. I'm telling you that as an unconstitutional agency, it needs to be abolished. And that being said, I can tell you 100% my experience with that. And to put it in comparison, imagine if my men and myself were to determine that even though Chevrolet has produced a new pickup truck and they're selling it to Ironton residents, and the Ironton Chevrolet dealership, let's just say, has got these trucks on the lot, but I don't like the fact that they come factory with mud tires. So I go and tell my men to start writing tickets for mud tires if they have mud tires on them from the factory because they're unlawful. And I go tell the dealership, you're not allowed to sell them anymore. Now, this is no judge. This is no city of Ironton city council passing a city ordinance. This is me as a police officer making that decision to determine what's legal and what's not and creating laws. That is completely illegal.
Well,
it's
now the way the executive and bureaucracy works is they've interpreted a law that does exist to give them the power. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying in reality there is a law that they use as an umbrella to cover them. So imagine if the town council said in the city, we don't want any tires or means of locomotion that destroys our streets. Maybe they meant it for bulldozers, right? They may have meant it for bulldozers, and then you have decided to interpret.
Well, let's put it into a different context then. Let's say that it would be like me saying, okay, this state law, I can stretch to this. I don't need the city solicitor's opinion. I don't need the city council's opinion. I'm just going to interpret it the way that I am. I am not a lawyer. It is not my job to interpret law. It's my job to enforce law.
You're right.
Now, if the Attorney General of the United States was to make a legal opinion on it and then get it potentially ratified by Congress, then now we've got a law. Or if, like you said, the Supreme Court makes a ruling on it, now we've got potentially a real law. But for these assholes to go around and they literally toot their horn saying this is legal and this is not, it's illegal. It's completely, it's bullshit, and that pisses me off.
No, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you. In the end, what really boiled it down correctly. Yeah. No,
that's what really bothers me. Is they just determine all of a sudden, what?
They just make it more complicated so it doesn't seem that easy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's laughable even under that little skit that you showed there. And I know that we were having fun with a parody or whatever with it, and that's fine. But the reality is the accuracy of that is frightening. Because that is
Fubar's right here. This is what bureaucracies try to do. They try to become Judge Dredd. They want to be the enforcers, the juries, and the judges all in one. And unfortunately, I think the big one is the EPA. That's the one we've known about way outside of its constitutional authorities for at least 3
decades. Or the IRS. I mean, for real, how many times are we stretching, my God, and leave it alone? I mean, you can't keep finding ways to make it enforceable. Seriously. Or, I'll tell you a prime example that I'm referring to, and that you may agree or disagree, I don't know, but is even when Eric Holder was in office as Attorney General and he stuck his nose in Ferguson, Missouri, and that police involved issue out there in Ferguson, Missouri, there was not a damn thing about that was a federal issue. Nothing. And I was so pissed off at the state of Missouri and the Attorney General for Missouri of not standing up and saying, mind your damn business. This has nothing to do with you. That's what should have happened.
Listen, we all know why it didn't.
Money.
Race.
Certainly. But more. I agree. And I know where you're going with that, but what it really boils down to, and I've seen this with my own eyes and the way it works. Here's the way, they like to say things like this. They'll say, well, NHTSA will come along, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for those or whatever. And they'll come along and they'll say, hey, you need to make sure that there's that your officers are doing this and they're wearing these green vests when they're on traffic stops, or not traffic stops, but on crashes. And then at first the state says, what? That's freaking dumb. Like, we're not doing that, blah, blah, blah. And Nitsa says, oh, okay, you're right. Yeah, you're not subordinate to us or anything. But you remember that $180 million that we were going to give you as a federal grant that for doing this? Well, I'm sorry, but you don't comply with our rules and regulations. So we're going to have to keep our money. And the state says, you know what I was thinking is green vest would be a really good idea. This would be a really good idea. We all of a sudden agree with you, Mr. Nitsa. And there's where bureaucracy at its finest is who's got the big pocketbook to be able to pay for the most that benefits me. And unfortunately, over the past 30 years, it's been the left. That's reality. I mean, it's sad, but it's true.
Well, here's the sad reality. If the right was in charge of government, people on the right would be trying to expand government. It's a natural, it's a human thing. As humans, we want to have control.
We've seen that.
If you don't believe me, every time something goes on in your community, when you in your own mind think, well, they ought to pass a law or they ought to do or ought to call someone. Anytime you want someone to live the life that you wish they'd live, now I'm not talking about them interfering with you. Now, if they're interfering with you, your property, your liberties, that's different. But I mean, we all do it. We see people doing things in a way different than we wish they would, and we go,
"It's my for." It's my for and no more. It's what my official agenda is. If it's in line with my agenda, then it's not a bad thing, and it's all of a sudden constitutional as hell.
Bar, you may be independent. You may be independent politically, but I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about human behavior, brother. You may be one of those rare people that have known this about yourself forever, but trust me, natural human behavior is to make people you want to be. We're herd animals. We want to be part of groups, and we want that group to be one we fit in. So we want the people around us to behave and act and live like we do. And the right did it. You know, when the right side of American society, and I don't necessarily mean politics, was in control in the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, you know, we created all these blue laws that we still deal with. Why? Because we want to make the other guy live without alcohol because we believe they should.
Well, wasn't it technically a Republican administration that pushed the Patriot Act stuff that went completely just crazy out there
the
for a
Bush
while?
administration is the Patriot Act, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something else too that registers to mind, Tom, is when you're talking about how the right and the left are basically they have similar agendas when they're in office. Maybe not the same propaganda. They'll push a little differently, but nevertheless. But look at Antifa. It's a prime example. There are so many gray lines there to what you think are the extreme. Which way are they extreme?
Yep.
Because it kind of goes like, I can't, because there's some of them that are just way out there, you know, that we would consider, oh, those are crazy leftists. But it's almost like, and I've heard you say this before, it's almost like when you go so far left, you're coming back right again, and then you're extreme right as well. You know, it's kind of like that sickening effect of let's just go too far until we both are too far, and then we meet. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
But
no, there's, you know, I have, you know, Kyle's seen this explanation and heard this lecture probably too many times. So I actually want to do a whole show about it. But there's the circular argument of right and left, which is what you're talking about. Then there's the, you know, the right and left
linear
on a linear graph, and the up down version. I can explain it 100 different ways. But when it comes to your average human and them wanting to exert control over their world. And that's probably, if we take all the politics out of it, all the governments out of it, and we think about just how we behave as humans, that's probably how it is we just want to create the bubble that we live in as comfortable for the way we think it ought to be as possible. We may not want to influence people as basic humans 100 miles away, but damn it, if I see you and I got to interact with you, I want you to behave in a way that I enjoy, that I like, that I'm comfortable with. And so then politically, in a modern society, we politically want to exert control so that person has no choice.
Right. I'll tell you an example. You'll get a kick out. This is funny that this just happened today. Okay. I literally got a call of a lady that called over her neighbors and the dog got loose. Okay. So we go down there. My men made the decision that the dog got loose accidentally. Okay. The guy says, you know, I come home from work, I opened the door, and he was so excited. He ran out of the house. And, you know, of course, he was 100 miles an hour running around, you know, whatever, Dad, I'm home, you know, whatever.
Right.
So So Karen, his neighbor, I'm just kidding. Her name's not really Karen. So Karen, so Karen decides that there's a leash law. So I'm going to call the police because that dog's mean. So we get down there and the dog's already put up. So I didn't witness it. My men didn't witness it. Right. And she says, what are y'all going to do about it? Well, we talked to him and he's already got the dog back up and he assured it was an accident. It wasn't anything intent. So now all of a sudden, what he thinks I'm doing righteously is, I mean, I'm telling him, my guys are saying, hey, look, you got to understand your neighbors don't like the dog running loose, whatever. But now all of a sudden to her, she cussed me till literally, I've never been talked to like that from an older lady. I mean, she's like, you worthless, blah, 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 mother. I mean, just like, and I'm going, wow, just because you don't like the outcome, just because I chose freedom over incriminating somebody for an accident and you don't like it. But if that was your dog that got loose, you would expect me to show you the same courtesy in which I showed him.
Right.
And that's exactly what that mentality is. It really is.
Yep.
It's sad, but it's true, So,
Yep. In the Army, we had this cadence that we would sing, and maybe Fubar remembers it.
Karen needs to be flogged.
It was always Karens need to be flogged. Karens may enjoy it. I'm not really sure. So I'm not sure that would be an answer, Fubar. But in the Army, we had this cadence, and I don't remember how it goes. That's why I said Fubar. Maybe you remember, but it's something about drill sergeant. Don't something to me. Get that so and so behind the tree. Right. So it's always get that guy, leave me alone. And that's just natural human thinking is we want to control. We want to centralize power. If we have any power at all, we want to centralize it. Right. And,
sure.
And I'm not saying every husband and wife does it, but every husband and wife tries to gather more control over what's going on from now. Maturity and the wisdom and self-discipline and all that comes in is, can you see that you're doing it and can you stop yourself from doing it to not, try to seize control and control your spouse. But we all do it. We do it at work. We do it in our personal relationships. We all try to consolidate power. The earliest example in written is Tower of Babylon, right? Sure. Trying to create that centralized government and that way to reach God, as it's put. But you can see it. All you got to do is read, 15 minutes worth of history, and you can see it. It's about gathering control, power, influence over others. You may do it with violence. You may do it at the point of a gun. But everybody, all through history, is trying to gain control, gain power over someone else, so that they can make the world the way they want it to be.
Well, sure. I mean, that's evident in almost every government. I mean, if you think about it, and I've heard people say before, we need to have, this in our government or whatever, or we need to have this. Okay. But the problem is there's got to be some kind of happy medium with that, because when you start giving them too much, and honestly, what appeared to be on paper, what appeared to be on paper was, a perfect system, at least the way I believe our founding fathers believed it to be, was the kind of the perfect idea of balance, has since the 20th century has certainly started shifting in a way that was probably, to this day, I would be so bold as to say that our founding fathers wouldn't recognize the system in which that we have in place now. And that's sad. But
the only way I think they'd recognize it is they'd recognize it retroactively. They would see it in the history of governments they have studied.
Sure.
Because they'd be like, oh yeah, well, this is some of the stuff we feared. You found the holes in what we wrote here. You found the hole here, and you made it. But hey, you made it 250 years. I mean, Thomas Jefferson's view was about, what was it? Every 80 years you needed a revolution. He thought that it would only last about years. So that took him up to the Civil War. So he was kind of right. You know what I mean? We kind of sort of got there.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to, and I know you and I've talked about a lot of stuff off camera, but when you're talking about war is not based on geographics. War is not based on really to say ideals, because ideals can be passed down. And even though it wasn't necessarily mine to begin with, it is now. But war is generational. War really is based on the fact of, in order to be able to really to implement a new thought process, as crude as it sounds, and anybody in the chat knows I'm not a violent man, I'm not saying that, but in order to really change the way things are perceived, or the potential for what we know is what we used to know as capitalism, is annihilation. To literally let them start back fresh, because you see, as soon as we leave the Middle East, what happens?
Well, this is going down some serious rabbit trails here, but
I know I'm not going to open that door, but I just
from 1776 to 1865 is about 80 some years, or 1860. I'm sorry, the Civil War started in 1860, so we got about 85 years between the Civil War and World War II. We've got about 80 years between World War II and now. We've got about 80 years. We're a little bit overdue, actually.
Strange how that
I
works.
know, crazy, right?
Yeah.
And you could keep going back. Let's see. Before 1776, you had the 1680s. So the big war before our revolution in the British mind was the Glorious Revolution of 1688. So you had 1688 to 1776 in the British mindset. So that's about 90 years, between 80 and 90. So all the way back to 1688, you've had right around 75 to 90 years between major overhauls and concepts of liberty and how things. So just in case anyone cares, in between the Civil War and World War II, the reason I mentioned World War II was not the war, but during World War II, and you had the FDR overhaul of our governmental system. You had almost an entirely different change. You had the creation of what we have talked about tonight as this bureaucratic fourth branch of government, which is unelected. So you've had a war and a massive change in the way people think and the way we govern about every 75 to 90 years, which is considered a long generation.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly kind of what I was referring to begin with. Exactly. Is living out life.
Yes.
It's in between lives.
I interpret history generationally. For Fubar, who hasn't heard that before, I think history moves in terms of generations, and the reading secular that out in my lifetime. There will be a rise of something major that will shift for everything after me. Not based on my life, but sometime during the 70 to 80 years that I live, there will be that change, that wave that happens. And I think it's relatively
kind of a major overhaul, whether it be positive or negative. It's frightening. I think where we're at too, because I think we're kind of in that point, which, I mean, I know, like I said, something that you and I talked about before, as well as how close we've been to that. When's it going to happen type thing, which is scary.
We're always in the brink of it.
And it's frightening. It's really frightening. And, and I pray to God that it doesn't happen.
Personally, I think we've been right on the edge for a while, but I think the system that our founders gave us has given the ability to stay on the edge without going over it. We're not necessarily a victim of it. I think because we have a relatively free society, and because we have freedom of speech, et cetera, we have a release valve that generations and other cultures before us may not have had as much of. I'm not saying we have a perfect liberty society, but I think we got more tools to prevent it than others have before us. The Fubar says, let's see, Karen, 1A, I assume even First Amendment, and the Chili's in the world somehow need to have some sort of consequences, because you can't just turn and knock their asses out without being arrested.
Oh,
so what's he mean by the 1A here, Chad?
He's talking about it's the First Amendment auditors, guys. They call themselves First Amendment guys because they go around and they challenge the the freedom of press, so to speak, to be able to record or be able to document or journalize what they're seeing, so to speak.
Gotcha. Okay.
But basically what they are, and then there are some of them like Terry. I think Terry has good intentions in mind. I think he really is just kind of going out and giving a public observation, to what's going on with local government. But there are some of them that blatantly just go out and their intention is nothing more than trouble.
Drama and trouble. Okay.
Yes. So it's not about freedom. It's not about seeing about the First Amendment. And I've said this, and I know you guys probably you may or may not have heard me on my panels before say this. Sometimes we have to realize that just because we have the right to do something doesn't mean that we should. When you say, oh, I can go into a public library and film because it's tax dollars that pay for that, and that's my First Amendment right. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find this little old lady that's sitting behind a desk working and not bothering anybody, and I'm going to put a camera in her face and be a freaking asshole. But what are you proving? What are you auditing at that point? Are you auditing this little lady that's been there for 40 years that just is literally checking out books to people? Seriously? Right. That's not what our founding fathers had in mind for the protection of our First Amendment rights. Okay. This little old lady sitting there renting out books to people is not your tyrant. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's not.
Let's see. So before we started tonight, I was looking up a couple things, and you kind of gave me a segue for it here. And I've said this before, but now I have the actual quotes in front of me. Benjamin Franklin, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. And that's sort of the key here is a free system. So think about it in terms of your kids, right? If you have good kids, you trust to make good decisions because they care about other people. They care about each other in terms of kids, and they know right and from wrong. And their judgment tends to lean towards, well, I'm not going to do bad because I'm not a bad kid, right? Then you can give them massive amounts of freedom.
Sure.
But if you know that, okay, Johnny tends to, as soon as he knows how to irritate his sister, or he gets the first opportunity to do something bad to her, he takes that opportunity, then you got to put more restrictions on him. And that's what they mean. And it took me a while as a guy who studies a lot of history, and a lot of the founding generation is my specialty. It took me a while to understand what they meant by that. Sure. What do you mean our system is only good for, as John Adams said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Now, notice he did not say Christian.
Sure.
He did not say a Christian people. He said religious. And I can tell you from studying a lot of Roman history that pre-empire, so the Republican history part of the Roman Republic, not the Roman Empire. The Roman Republic was known from historians as being a religious people. And it took me a while to understand that because I had the standard understanding of religious, meaning what you and me and Kyle would think. You go to church a lot, right? You go to church on Sunday, Wednesday, you go Sunday night probably, blah, 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 blah. Now, religious means you adhere to a religion. You adhere to a system of beliefs. A religious people, I mean, name me a religion other than Satanism that doesn't have a code of ethics, a 10 commandments, a system of how you must behave regarding others in your world. And that's what this means. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people that have a system of right and wrongs, because we're going to give you a system of liberty. We're going to allow you to walk in and irritate the shit out of librarians that aren't bothering anybody. But we're going to assume that if you're a moral and religious and virtuous people, that you're just not going to irritate people for the sake of doing it. Right. That's what you've been saying, Chad.
Exactly. And that allows the lack of governing when that happens. It's the old definition of integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking. It's easy to do. It's easy to make sure that you stop at that stop sign when you see that policeman sitting there, right? But when nobody's around, it changes, and it's easy to be like, you know what, I'm just going to roll through that sucker, right? That would be an example of integrity. If you, I do too. Hey,
dude, it's 3 a.m. It's a 4-way stop. Nobody's there. Okay,
exactly. I agree.
Stay out of where I travel, Chad.
I'll try my best. But that being said, that's a prime example of integrity. And I teach my kids all the time, be like, I'm not going to be able to catch you do everything. I'm not. It's ultimately up to you. Do you want to be a man of integrity? Well, what do you mean? Well, you've got the opportunity. Do you want to do the right thing even when I'm not around? Even if you know I'll never catch you? That's your choice. Now, I would hope that you would choose to do the right thing even if I'm not around. Because if you do, then I'm doing my job. If you do the right thing even when I'm not around, then I'm teaching you to be a man. And that's what matters. And I think that's probably a very, very vast explanation of what our founders thought, is we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And that's why when I use the example of our freedom, I talk about our little experiment of freedom, because it really had never really been seen like that before. And then the idea that we're still kind of experimenting with it. And the idea that we were all in this together, like, because we weren't going to elect a ruler. So we're all in this together to make sure this works. Well, so it's our little example of being in something together to try something, and I think that's probably what they had in mind. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a historian, and you guys are probably have a lot more education than me when it comes to history or to understand the political background of things. But I can tell you that at least my assumption of what they wanted was true freedom, to the point to where it was individual freedom, knowing that if I'm doing my part, then Tom's going to do his part too. And Kyle's going to do his part too. And I'm not going to bother Tom, and I'm not going to bother Kyle, and Kyle's not going to bother me, and Tom's not going to bother me. And it's going to go and it's a cycle of freedom without law, so to speak. Right. Because ultimately that's the idea, is you are your own. And that's a big sovereign citizen argument.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's huge.
That's why we overlap with them, and we could at least have a conversation.
But the problem with that lies is that doesn't apply to everybody. What happens when there is an asshole in the bunch? What happens when there is some guy?
There's always one, dude.
There's always going to be one, right?
Well,
somebody's going to come in and take your shit.
And without going down a huge rabbit hole here, trailing off or rabbit box again, inside joke, but it's why communism doesn't work.
Obviously,
it sounds great. I mean, who the hell doesn't think that like everyone just working together and but there's always that one asshole. There's always an asshole. You know what I mean? So none of it works. And this kind of hit home, especially for you, Tommy, but Chad, I know, and involvement on your part too. Talking about the coming of man, I guess, or to hold moral value. The agoge, right? I mean.
Sure.
So there it is, Tommy. I see the grin on your face. But to hold a certain standard, right? So there's and that precedes the what we're talking about the coming of our nation and our forefathers, and but even dating back further in history. But there's a certain code that is followed, and it outlines the expectations for the people, or for, again, for lack of a better term, and I'm not discrediting women here, but I don't want this to turn south, my wife to come out of the bedroom, but the coming of age, becoming a man, or just being a good person, being what is expected or what is set forth as morally or justly acceptable in the culture. So the agoge, I want to throw that term out there for a little inside joke, I guess, or a little inside knowledge.
So I'll go ahead, and for anyone listening or listening in the future, this is how me and Chad came to meet each other. Is I had a gun shop that started off as a training facility. I didn't really want to sell guns. I was advised by several people, which they weren't wrong. It didn't turn out, but they still weren't wrong, that in order to attract your students, you need to sell guns, bring people in. That's more of a normal business. And that's how I ended up hiring Chad to teach my hand-to-hand portion of the self-defense stuff that I would teach. So part of the spiel I would give everyone is that the agoge is a Greek word. It was the name of the school that the Spartans would send their young men to. So at 8 years old, your boy was taken away. He then went to live in the barracks, what we would call barracks today, with the other warriors. And from 8 years old to the time, if I remember right, was 32, he lived with soldiers. He lived with warriors. And Spartan community, Spartan society was nothing but warriors and wives. That was it. And they had slaves. And the Helots were the slaves. So in the Agoge, that was the school where they trained the warriors. You learned not only every facet of being a warrior, but you learned politics, you learned history, you learned dance, you learned art, you learned the entire well-rounded version of being a Spartan citizen. And once you graduated it at around, I believe, if I remember right, around 16 before you were considered done with the training, then you were considered a citizen. And you weren't considered a citizen until you had finished this, what some would call an indoctrination process of how to be a citizen of Sparta. And if you couldn't pass, if you died, then, so what? You weren't going to be a good citizen anyways, which is how Sparta, so there's a lot of things to look up to in Sparta and a lot of things not to look up to about Sparta. But in the end, the Agoge was what I based my concept of my business on. I wanted to have a series of classes, a whole academy that would create a better American citizen, which is why it was called the American Agoge. That was the whole idea. So thanks for bringing that up, Kyle. It's a very bittersweet thought. Sorry.
I'm sorry too, Tommy, but I feel like it deserved.
It's okay. I'm exaggerating.
It deserved a little camera time, a little lolive stream.
Well, we had a good time. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
So Kyle was a student at the American Agoge and heard that lecture firsthand in a class at one point. And Chad was an instructor in the American Agoge, and he heard me give that lecture a few times. So a little nostalgic there for the three of us.
Yeah, that was some good times, man. There was a lot of just for those.
It's an amazing concept. It's an amazing concept. Right money, I think it would still be amazing, but that's another story. So Fubar says, with that example as to liberty and so forth and how we're made, I assume is what he's referring to. Who are we to force the way we live upon another country? I'm playing devil's advocate. So here's my explanation. Our government is tasked with only a couple legitimate duties. One of them is to protect us. If it's in America's interest to force our ways on an enemy, then so be it. Knock yourself out. If it's us simply trying to spread liberty and freedom through nonviolent means, propagandic type means, I'm cool with that as well. Preach liberty, preach it far and wide. I'm totally fine with that. When it comes to us enforcing our way of government, our way of thinking in our society simply for resources only, then it comes down to how bad do we need them? Because our government is tasked with our interests. So to me, that's how I gauge it. We went into Iraq. I got no problem. You're right. We're not the world. So in other words, if Uzbekistan is fighting Kyrgyzstan over how they interpret the Quran, not our business. So we're not the world police.
Nor do I want it to be.
Correct. But I'm probably more of a hawk when it comes to how we've involved ourselves. I think we're fine in the Vietnam conflict because if you understand the teachings of communism, they believe that communism has not been fully tried until it's tried on the entire globe. So that's where the domino theory came into the effect from the State Department, which got us involved in Vietnam, is they believe they have to take Vietnam, but they're not going to stop at Vietnam. They're going to go on, they're going to go on, they're going to go on until they've enveloped the globe with communism. So I'm cool with the decision. Now, how we did it when we got there, that's a whole other story. But the decision that we had to stop communism at its every advance, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the fact that we went into Iraq. Now, what we did when we got there is another story. But the fact that we have to get involved, I'm fine with. But we're not okay to be a policeman. Just because one country's picking on another is not our job. So that's who we are, at least. And I think it's consistent constitutionally.
I agree. And I think too, a lot of the what we tend to forget is because the communist ideas at the time, especially just prior to the Vietnam conflict, was the whole global thing. So as hard as we were in theory pushing capitalism, freedom, liberty, whatever, there was another side that was pushing, the other ideals. So it was kind of one of those things where if we want to guarantee that freedom, liberty still, maintains here in the Western side, and all that stuff, we have got to kind of step in when it's still early enough, if that makes sense, as opposed to looking back and grabbing our ass. And I think that's kind of I think that was kind of the idea behind, those conflicts anyway.
What years did you serve, if you don't mind me asking you, Fubar? We may have been lied to, but I'll say this. As far as my understanding, and tell me if there's evidence that I'm wrong, but Russian intelligence, French intelligence, German intelligence, Belgian intelligence, British intelligence, Australian intelligence, and American intelligence all said there were weapons of mass destruction. So I know it's been told since then that we've been lied to and that there weren't. I tend to think that all those intelligence agencies were right and something else happened. And in the end, we actually did find WMD. So I'm not sure. Plus, we had about a dozen legitimate by international law, 98 to 2. Okay, yeah, that was. So I got out literally 8 weeks before 9/11. So I was in until 2001. So you see, everything changed literally within 2 months after I left. It was a whole different world within the Army. So I get that. However, WMD were there, and every intelligence agency of any. By the way, Israeli intelligence. That's another one. Any intelligence agency of any reputation around the world all said yes, that was happening.
Wasn't it the French that were pushing it really hard in the beginning, saying, "Look, guys, we're telling you that this is big time shit."
I seem to remember the French and the Israelis more than anybody else.
I was thinking maybe
the Israelis bigger than
which kind of expect the Israelis because they're going to get it first if something happens.
They've been right
they're right the fuck there. Yeah, they got to go through Israel to get to the rest of us. Right. So, yeah, I'm not so sure we were lied to based on what you think. I mean, what you were referring to as the lie, not knowing exactly what lie you're talking about. But what we did when we got there, in my opinion, we go there, and this is fix my language if you need to, Chad. But we need to submit them and leave.
Sure.
Sure.
Which is what we done in '91, the original trip over there, wasn't it? It was kind of with the Kuwait issue type stuff was kind of go in there and just say, "Hey, stop, bam," type thing, And I know everybody's got ideas too with that, with the motive behind that and stuff. I don't know. I hate to say that I have enough, understanding to, I don't know.
I got no issue with going in for oil.
Sure,
none. Now, if we go in because the CEO of BP Oil asks us to go in, now that's another story.
Right. That's what people are pushing, is the whole OPEC thing and how the people have their hands in the pockets type thing or whatever. But
right. And I'm sure
everybody's got their hands in everybody else's pocket, man.
You mean to tell me that gas really didn't go up $3 a gallon like that just because? Exactly. I thought that was it. I didn't realize that. When I was saying, I was actually thinking that today. What are you partaking in, Tom?
Tom's Foolery.
Oh, okay.
Which I had to try it the first time because it had my name on it. And
it is good. It's very good.
And it's Ohio straight bourbon whiskey.
Is that right? Okay. That's a new one to me.
I have this in a cancer, but it's Buffalo Trace.
This is made. Oh, you've got some?
No, it's in a cancer. It's Buffalo Trace. It's
Buffalo Trace. So here's the deal. Here's the deal, Chad. I found this at the CVS here in Ironton, and I was like, "Whoa, what the hell's that?" So once I got it, I went to their website and everything. Right? It's a family farm. So all the grains and everything they use are raised right on their family farm.
So it's
all
Ohio.
It's northeast of Cleveland in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. When you go to their website, when they've got barrels they want to bottle, they actually get the family together.
No way.
And if you see, it's like Maker's Mark. It's got the wax tops. They get the family together, and they actually got pictures of one of the dudes in the family standing there with a damn crock pot, sealing bottle tops.
Is that not cool?
It is very cool. So, and it's also good stuff. So their number one product that made them a somebody was their Applejack, and I've got some. You can't get it at the CVS in Ironton. They don't carry the Applejack, but I got it when I was up in the Akron area. Applejack is what's that?
I guess that was my next question is what's the overall take on it? What's the final?
Well, this is
very good.
By the way, Kyle, I was going to show you. This is batch 31. The first bottle we got was batch 27.
Yeah.
So if I remember right, every time they bottle, they take 5 barrels off of their aging shelf and then mix it all together so there's consistency within that group, and then bottle. It's like 6 or 7 barrels, something like that.
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
So this is batch 31, but the first bottle I found was batch 27. I think I went through 3 bottles of 27.
So according to the laws that be, is that real bourbon? Is that actually considered? I remember how you guys were breaking down the definitions before.
So you actually knew the TTB. That's pretty sweet that you know that. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what the actual standards were, but I knew there was elements there that had to be met.
It's bourbon, yes, and it's straight bourbon because it hasn't been mixed with anything. But but Kentucky is allowed to say Kentucky because it's made in Kentucky. Well, this one's called Ohio because it was
obvious reasons.
It's in Ohio.
Yep. Well, not only that, all the ingredients and everything even come from Ohio. So, I know
cool,
that's
man.
what blew my mind. I'm like, holy shit! There's an Ohio straight Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. See,
it's like any town you go to or any city you go to where there's the local like market where they have all homegrown local produce and stuff they use to produce the meals or anything that you find there. There's one in Huntington, by the way, that's great. It's the market there in Huntington, but totally off subject as far as bourbon goes, but same concept. Local produce, local purchase, local sold. I am really fast, guys. This is new to me. I haven't done this on a computer yet, actually, so I'm noob. But I'm catching some of these comments from Fubar, and I know we're talking about bourbon now, but he did mention after the comment he made about his service, George Bush Jr. was angry about them taking a shot at his dad. He wanted an excuse. There you go. You got it, Tommy. Yeah, you put it on there. I believe that's what he was talking about as far as the lie. I believe that's.
I'm not saying that justified everything we did. However, in international law, that was way above a legitimate excuse to go to war.
Sure. Not
saying he should have, we should have, not saying you should have had to deal with what you dealt with. However, I'm saying in terms of history, in terms of international law, them having an official state-sanctioned assassination plot, yeah, that's good enough to go to war.
Right.
Agree with it or not, there was a plethora of legitimate excuses to go to war in Iraq.
I like the comment below that too. Again, on the feed that I'm looking at, which I'm sure you guys on the panel are looking at as well. There you go. The world's a better place without Saddam. So, just my 2 cents here. And Tommy, you have far more information on it. And Fubar, you correct me if I'm wrong, please. But this is probably more in your wheelhouse too, Tommy. So, about like Green Beret, for example. I mean, the whole idea behind that is. We infiltrate, we train the locals to basically support themselves. And we then we remove ourselves, but the idea is liberation. So sometimes it takes longer than what is expected or what is, ideal, but the idea is it's not about, taking over or imposing, American beliefs on others. It's about liberating others.
Listen, I mean, I sound kind of simplistic, and I understand in the eyes of the more erudite and educated, I may sound a little simplistic when I say this, but I think whenever we have to go into a place like Panama, whenever we go into Grenada, I mean, I could get into details of each, but I'm just saying whenever we go into these, Japan and Germany, there we go. I'll use those.
There you go.
Whenever we go into these countries, I think we need to just say, here's our constitution. Boom. That's your constitution now. If you want to change it, it's got a mechanism inside of it to change it. But that's now your governing body. If you want to change it to fit your culture, your society, your beliefs, knock yourself out. But I think our system is by far in its original state the best humanity has ever created. And if you want to change it, Japan, if you want to change it, Germany, if you want to change it, Iraq, if you want to change it, Afghanistan, knock yourself out. But why we go in there and allow them to create their own fucked up shit when you got the same people sitting at the table that were doing the fucked up shit that caused us to be there? I don't fucking know.
Wow, was that not a prime example with Iraq when we literally went in there and we empowered and we empowered what we become our biggest enemy with ISIS? We literally said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to teach you. We're going to teach you how to kick ass. We're going to make you really good at it." And then we say, "Oh, why all of a sudden are you wanting to kill us?"
Yeah, well, man. I mean,
we never fucking liked you.
Right. And some people just don't want freedom.
Hey, speaking of which, and complete kind of off topic, but have you guys seen the movie? I think it's on Netflix called The Wall.
Yes.
Tom.
The what?
You've got The Wall.
The Wall.
Do yourself a favor and watch that movie.
Not Pink Floyd.
No.
Great album, by the way, or a great song. Even better album. But
I'm telling you that is right on lines with what we're talking about. And honestly,
I don't even think I've seen it.
You've got to make a time this weekend to watch that movie. It's worth it. It's a military campaign. It's a sniper unit. And I'm not going to go any further than that. But let's just say that the plot twist that kind of throws you the curveball is right in line with what we're talking about. So just do yourself a favor and watch it. It's a good one.
Okay.
It's got John Cena in it, but you expect him to be a really big player in the movie, and he's not, like at all. So, but it's a good one. It is a good one.
Cameo.
Yeah.
So they throw his name in to get viewers.
I think so, probably, yeah. But listen, guys, I've got to jump because I'm going to be live in about 20 minutes, and I got to get a few things done before I do. But Tom, I appreciate you having me up and allowing me to come hang out. And Kyle's good to see anybody.
You too. Thanks for being here, man.
And for everybody in the chat, God bless you, and hang out, and you guys will have a good time. And you guys can sit back and watch Tom drink pure Ohio bourbon. And you'll notice how effective it is as he continues to, if he starts slurring. Good night, guys.
Good night, brother.
He's something else, man.
Yes, he is. Yeah. Informative, man. Good stuff.
He is. You know, it's funny when you first get to know him, you don't think he is what he is. Relatively quiet.
Well, now that he's gone, I'll speak freely. Yeah. I'm joking. No, man.
Let's talk about cops now.
Yeah, cops. Oh, they're all bad. Yeah. No. The first couple of times, I don't really know Chad, but I've come to really appreciate, respect him, his opinion. He's an educated person when it comes, at least when it comes, again, to his wheelhouse. We all have our wheelhouse, but no, good stuff, man. I've enjoyed the interaction that I've been able to be a part of or view even, doing this with you and stuff. So, good guy, good stuff. And it's a good content. And I've watched a little bit of his, his stuff. I need to check out more of it. The stuff. So
now he does some shorts, some stuff I haven't gotten into yet that are pretty cool. So Fubar says I got a drinking and a dart tournament. So if I use strict English grammar on your sentence there, Fubar, it means you have a drinking tournament as well. How do I get involved in a drinking tournament?
From states away.
I mean, so is it you must drink and dart? You got to throw darts while you drink. Exactly how's this tournament work?
Maybe you dart to drink. Is that it?
I'm pretty sure what he's saying is he's got a lot of drinking to do this summer, and he's going to play some darts. But I mean,
I'm curious if Fubar is familiar with a group tightener and if it applies to darts.
Oh, so what Kyle is referring to, Fubar, we don't know what profession you're in, man. But a group tightener, I was taught by a highly respected, very big name in the firearms training world. Me and him and some other people. My drinking team has a dart problem. I like that.
Solid. How do I join?
Yeah, right. I know, right? So I was out in Utah at a trip with a very respected gentleman in the firearms training world. And I was telling him how I wanted to get my people together, Kyle being one of them. And I wanted to get an official real fertilizer. And what I wanted to do was several of us, say 3, 4, 5 minimum, we take the police qualification test without getting into details. We do a qualification. Then we sit down and we drink X amount, whatever that amount may be. And then we all do another qualification based on the speed of our drinking. And we have a safety there that is controlling the firearms, controlling what we're doing. And with each level of intoxication, we take a qualification test. I wanted to see how it went. So anyways, I was telling this gentleman that is a highly respected guy. I was telling him my idea, and he went, well, damn, we've been doing that for years. Now, this person was the commander of an extremely
reputable.
There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Extremely reputable SWAT, not just, Billy Bob SWAT team in Billy Bob County, wherever, but a highly reputable SWAT team. And he was the commander for well years. And he said, we did our time. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, we called it a group tightener. Now, Fubar, you being in the military, you know what a shot group is. That's where you shoot and you want your shots to be in a very small space to show that you're consistent and you're doing well. So he said that they would stop at the bar and get a couple group tighteners before they would go to the range to qualify. So his contention is that with a little bit of alcohol, you actually get better. And it gets worse as you go. And I've heard the same thing among pool players my whole life, that when you drink a little bit and you're playing pool, you get a little better. And then you get worse. So that's what he meant by group tightener. I'm glad you brought that up, Kyle. I'm having a couple group tighteners myself.
I am too. I'm glad.
But you know what, dude? It's been over 2 hours, and I've had a blast. It's been fun. But I'm going to let you go because you looked really tired at about 45 minutes.
I got a second wind.
Yeah, Chad showed up, kind of threw a little energy in there. That was good.
Yeah.
But I'm going to let you go, man. Thank you so much for being same in darts. We call it riding the line.
Ooh. Oh, that's new to me.
I've not heard that. That sounds like a really bad Sylvester Stallone movie.
Yeah, it's new to me, but I'm going to check it out. I bet it's got either Nicolas Cage in it, maybe Stallone.
I tell you what, Fubar. Hey, thanks for being here, Fubar. I really appreciate it. I can't explain to you how much I appreciate you hanging out with us, man. We got to get you on a live show at some point. Don't know if you're down for that, but if you are, we'll figure it out. Thanks for being here very much. And Chad, oh my God, Chad's gone. Kyle's here. Group tighteners, bro. Group tighteners. We'll see you later, man. You guys have a good night.
Yeah, man,
Happy New Year if I don't talk to you soon. Go Bucks. Go Buffs. What was the other one?
CSU.
Broncos. Bucks, Buffaloes, all that Northwestern flora and fauna shit. Fubar, I hope you guys all win everything you're doing, bro. No problem. Thank you for being here, Fubar. Sure appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody. Good night, Kyle.
Night, brother.